that he could retrieve little of it until adulthood. His childhood in Berlin, his years as either Michael or Igor, barely existed in his memory. As a youngster, he attended the private Jüdische Waldschule Kaliski, an elementary school that, during Hitler's rise, became a Jews-only institution. Nichols' father, a doctor named Pavel Peshovsky, was a Russian Jew, albeit so secular that he didn't even believe in circumcision. His mother, Brigitte Landauer, was a German Jew, wholly invested in and proud of her national heritage, and also indifferent to her religion. Within their cultural circle, Paul and Brigitte were not atypical. As Ladi Kaliski, who founded the school Nichols attended, put it, "We all had to learn to become Jewish." Most of us came from very assimilated families, and so did the children. But we understood that in order to give children a more positive attitude, they had to know something about their background. Whatever that education was to be, Michael, or as Elaine May later teasingly called him, little Igor, was not in the school long enough to absorb it. His memories of the Kaliski school were few and mostly miserable. He recalled a group of German children in black shirts stealing his bicycle. And more vividly, he could picture, with awful clarity, a scene with my gym teacher and my mother, and realizing they were lovers. She was a beautiful woman, and I remember her quarreling with him, and he ripped a necklace off her and threw it out a window, and she went running after it. As an adult, Nichols spoke as if that moment were still raw, admitting, "I suppose I've spent a large part of my life trying to sort that out." But at other times he pushed the door shut. A Jew in Nazi Germany, parents always fighting, he would say, as detached as if he were musing about a stranger. Aren't all childhoods bad? His ancestry, the family legend as he called it, was dramatic, filled with art and politics, wealth, loss, privation, and bloodshed. When he left Berlin as a little boy, he knew hardly any of it. His mother and his aunt had given him and Robert the good part. He was a cousin of Albert Einstein, no less, and thus had a famous relative already in America, a story he became so certain was prideful apocrypha that he was astonished when it turned out to be true. But they left out virtually everything else. He knew that his father was now a two-time immigrant. As a young anti-Bolshevik supporter of Alexander Kerensky, he had fled Russia, crossing the Gobi Desert into Manchuria, and eventually resettling in Germany. But not until Nichols was almost 80 did he learn that a fortune in gold had helped Pavel Peshovsky start his new life. Jews with gold mines, he marveled when, during a guest appearance on a TV genealogy show, he first heard the truth. One of his great-grandfathers, Grigory Distler, had taken possession of what was thought to be a depleted mine in Sakhalin Island and found an immense undiscovered trove of gold, enough to give his daughter Anna and her son, Nichols' father, 75 bars. The inheritance enabled their passage out of Russia and allowed Peshovsky to set up a successful medical practice in Berlin. "I always had this picture of my father somehow working his way up," Nichols said. They were rich. Who knew? I wish to God I had gotten to know my father better, because I had it all wrong. His mother, Brigitte, came from unhappier circumstances. Her father, Gustav Landauer, was an intellectual polymath who studied metaphysics and translated Shakespeare into German. He was also a political firebrand, a committed believer in the philosophy of an anarchist, post-governmental agrarian utopia, and an agitator who served jail time for his insurrectionist articles in Der Socialist. Bearded, oratorically fiery, and 6.5 feet tall, he cut a formidable public figure. In 1903, he married Hedwig Lachmann, a poet and translator whose adaptation of Oscar Wilde's Salome became the libretto for Richard Strauss's opera. Landauer was interested in religion as a field of research, but had no use for it in his home, nor did his wife, despite being the daughter of a cantor. Brigitte grew up in Hermsdorf, a largely Jewish suburb of Berlin, in a house filled with literature and art. "I played with Jewish children," she recalled, "but we were the only ones who celebrated Christmas and Easter, an entirely secular Christmas with presents, stars, tinsel. At school, I was the only child who sat alone while the others studied religion and recited their prayers."